let you know that I'm an immigrant, first of all. I came when I was 9 years old. We were very poor. I paid my way through school. My family could not afford to send me to school. So I had to work evenings and pay my way through school. I earned an engineering degree and an MBA in finance. But by working hard, I rose to some of the highest levels in corporate America, becoming a vice president at JP Morgan Chase, a vice president at Citigroup, and president and founder of my own company for 22 years that my son took over when I entered politics. And entering politics was accidental. But the secret to success, as you will find out, is to pursue a field that you have passion in. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, you're not going to be successful. I feel that I have not worked a day in my life, because I get up every morning and I look forward to going to work and facing the challenges of the day and accomplishing things. And that has been kind of the story of my career, and I think it should be yours as well. So the moral here is you've got to find something that you enjoy doing every day, that you enjoy getting up for and going to work for. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful. And you may not find it in day one, but it's something that you must always strive for. It's a very competitive world out there, and you're going to need every skill and every resource that you have, and you can muster in order to become successful. It's not going to work otherwise. I think you may be deceiving yourself if you feel that you can go day in, day out by doing something that you don't have passion for. The next thing that I want to say about being successful and certainly being in law school you should be aware of is you gotta have some ethical standards. Don't walk the edge. Don't step over the edge. It's usually a test of character. Don't think it's not going to be noticed, don't think it's not going to be held against you. Moral values, ethical values are very important, and they are valued in society as they are valued in the business world. Don't think that you have to be successful at any cost. It may take a little longer, but at the end of the day, you're going to be much more successful. You're going to be recognized much more, and you will be rewarded to a greater extent. If people perceive that you are bending the rules, if you are hiding something, they're going to become suspicious of you. They're going to be uncomfortable with you. They're always going to sense that there's something about you that they're not comfortable with, or they don't trust. People are very perceptive. Your superiors are going to be very perceptive. Your customers are going to be very perceptive, and it's important that they feel comfortable with you. So ethics are very important, and I know passion and ethics are not being taught at school, but it doesn't matter how good you are, what skills you have. If you don't have an ethical standard, a high ethical standard, you're not going to be successful. You're going to be called out, and it's going to be very difficult for you to recover. But the converse is true. If you communicate, if you have high ethical standards, you're not going to bend the rules. Then I think you're going to be rewarded beyond your imagination. Lastly, it's important that I found, in my career, clear thinking and writing are critical. How you express yourself, how clearly you define what your objectives are, will make it easier for you to achieve those objectives. And you can never, articulate clearly what your end objective is, your goal is that you want to achieve, unless you're able to put it down in writing. And that's why those two aspects go hand in hand. And I'm sure that is the case as you're finding it in law. Very often, you have to make your case, and you have to make it, precisely, you have to make it in a comprehensive way, and you have to be able to put it down in writing. So those three aspects that I found are very critical to success. Passion, you gotta enjoy what you're doing, you gotta have high ethical standards, and you have to have, clear thinking, clear thinking processes as to what you want to achieve, what your objective is. Because if you don't have clearly defined objectives, then you'll never achieve a result that is acceptable and meaningful to your supervisors or to other people. What I've done is brought my 35 years of business experience to county government, to government, effectively. And what I found is that the government, certainly in Nassau County, but at all levels, have very few people with business experience. They have a lot of attorneys, and I have nothing against attorneys, but attorneys don't have the business skills. And I think in most cases, attorneys are taught to defend their client, or to advocate for their client. So it's always an adversarial relationship. Business is exactly the opposite. And business leadership is all about bringing people together, to work together in teamwork to achieve objectives. And that fundamental business principle is completely lacking in government. And that's why we see inevitably at every level of government, our political leaders fighting in public with one another, as opposed to getting into a room and solving the differences, deciding what the goal is or the solution is, and then coming out and serving the best interests of the public. So bringing those business principles to county government, I believe we made a huge difference in Nassau County. We took a government that was almost going bankrupt, with a $135 million deficit, no money in the bank, no fund reserves. And in the first year alone, we turned that around into a $26 million surplus. Our total budget is $3 billion, close to $3 billion. And we did it by streamlining government, making government more efficient, eliminating a lot of the unnecessary and wasteful contracts by simply asking a simple question: what is the value of this contract? What is the value, the merit that it delivers to the taxpayer, to the county? And in a lot of cases, there was no answer. It was just a lot of contracts were just being automatically renewed year after year. Secondly, we found a lot of contracts were, as is customary in government, had recurring monthly payments or quarterly payments that were not tied to any milestones or any deliverables. And in business, you have to, and in law, I think, in putting contracts together, there has to be a correlation between a deliverable and a payment. But often you find in government, in these government contracts, there is none. And you have these progress payments. So you spend your total budget for that project, and at the end you don't have a product or a system that is functional, which is what was intended when you embarked on this contract. And those are not unusual cases. They're common in government. So we put an end to all of those. The third thing we did with regards to contracts is we put an end to these, automatic renewal of contracts, and we said if we have a relationship with a particular vendor for more than 3 years, we would put that contract out for rebidding. We wanted to make sure that we get the best value for the taxpayer. So consequently, without cutting any of the social services or cutting any of the core services that government is expected to provide, we've been able now in 3 years to balance the budget by streamlining government and without raising property taxes. So we protected the taxpayers, we protected the needs in Nassau County. We continue to provide the core services that county government is expected to provide, and we did it without raising property taxes, protecting the taxpayers. At the same time, we reduced the amount of borrowing that was required to fund government by 75%, which is a remarkable achievement. And when you put that in the context of some of the exponential cost increases that we've had to absorb, such as the, in our case, 30% increase in our health insurance premiums for our employees and our pensioners, where government in New York State, in most cases, pays 100% of the premium. Our pension contributions into the state pension fund have gone up 60% in the past 3 years. We've had labor agreements in place with annual salary increases of 3.5%. So we've been able to absorb all those increases that were beyond our control by streamlining government, making it more efficient, while continuing to provide the essential services that we provide. So we're very proud of that accomplishment, and why I urge a lot more business people to run for office and come into government, because they can make a huge difference. And it's important that they do. With no offense to attorneys, I think a lot of you will probably end up in government, but I urge you, along the way, if that's your intent, take some business courses. Maybe in your careers, before you go into government, become more involved on the business side of the companies that you're involved, as an attorney. I think that you will find that's useful. I think you'll be very prepared for a career in politics if you ever decide to take that route. I think to some extent, Governor Cuomo has basically done some of the same things in Albany, and that's why they've been able now to produce 2 years in a row with balanced budgets. So it can be done. We're hoping that Washington takes some cue and start doing the same thing, because as we're hearing, they're running budget deficits of close to 30%, close to $1.5 trillion. The national debt has gone up by 50%, and it's going up. And young people like yourselves are going to end up paying those bills, and you may not have the opportunities as a result. Yeah, I've had some people in my generation have become successful. So I'll stop my remarks here and take your questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to know specifically what your thoughts are on succeeding in government and in the political sector versus the private sector. I know that you're pursuing the U.S. Senate and so on, but how are the two sectors different? How are they different, and what is your advice on succeeding in the sector?
I think the principles are the same. You gotta enjoy being in the public sector. Public service is about getting along with people, bringing people together, and working with people. You don't have to be critical. You can be, I guess, you can be disagreeable without being critical. And I thought the principles are not the same. Ethics are very important. It's so easy in government. It's easier in government to break the rules, or to sidestep the rules very often because you want to do a favor for somebody, which is customary. But you can be helpful without breaking the rules, and that's a policy that I've instituted. We can try to expedite things, but I don't want anybody in my staff in my office breaking the rules. And it's critical that you set that example. Motivating people, to get things done. It's the same thing in private industry as it is in government. If you're a political leader, criticizing people has a diminishing return. You gotta motivate people. You gotta make them feel good about themselves, You gotta make them feel that they're contributing something worthwhile, and consequently, you're gonna get a higher level of productivity. And that's the same thing, and certainly holds true in private industry, and I found it holds true in public services as well. The myth that, you know, public civil servants, you know, are not very productive is not true. They're not very productive because their management, you know, is not motivating them. It does not clearly define goals for them to achieve, and doesn't delegate the responsibility for them to get the job done. I certainly found in county government, you know, people, a lot of the people were professionals. They want to do a good work. You know, they're very conscientious, but again, they need to be motivated. They need to be given clear responsibilities and left alone to do their job. So it's not much different. Ethics are very important on both sides. Yes.
You mentioned how there's a sort of different mindset between private and public sector, business and government.
Mm-hmm.
How did you go about changing people's thinking when you came into office?
Well, I haven't changed. Basically I tried to change the environment in government to one of a more business orientation. As I said, you know, having clearly defined responsibilities, articulating the goals that we wanted to achieve, leading by example in terms of setting the ethical standards, and delegating responsibility to people, letting them do their work and holding them accountable. And I think they responded greatly. You know, so it's no different. You know, and I think there's a great deal of opportunity, I think, you know, for government to be run as a business, because it has to be, you know, to be as efficient as a business. It'll never be as efficient, but it certainly, as a goal, it should be much more efficient than it is today. Yes.
You mentioned when, you know, trying to balance the Nassau County budget, it was great that your office kind of looked to creative solutions instead of austerity measures. Were there any solutions that you implemented that were faced with, you know, public criticism or criticism from the outside? And if so, how did your office deal with that?
All of them. Change is always faced with criticism. And I'll give some example. We privatized the bus service, Long Island
right.
Bus. You know, certainly the unions were against it. There was, you know, some public outcry from special interest groups. But we were faced with a situation that the MTA that was running the buses wanted to reduce service by about 30%, and was demanding another $25 million from the county, which would have been about a 25% increase in the budget. So we were getting less service and would pay more for it. Okay. Certainly the union was against it. Certain, you know, community activists were against it. You know, we had large demonstrations in front of the administration building. We went ahead, and the result is you know, there's only been a cutback of about 10% of routes that were underutilized, and rather than paying a $25 million increase, we reduced the cost to the county by about $7 million. So we got better service at a lower cost. And now you know, our buses are repainted, they have a fresh look. They're arriving they're on time at their bus stops, which was an issue because a lot of people were used to, they were timing to the buses arriving late. So now they started complaining that the buses were arriving on time. So we're not getting any complaints right now. I think people are generally satisfied. They again have better service at a lower cost. There was another example that I'm trying to think. Justin, can you help me out?
Special districts, we changed our policy.
No, it wasn't the special jurisdiction. But there was another situation that we have similar. Whenever there's change, you will always opposition. And by the way, we also accommodated the unions with the bus, because all the drivers that were previously with the MTA were hired with the same pay and benefits approximately, you know, as they had with the MTA. So now the union is happy as well. So we work things out, and you know, our public is you know, is better served as you know, as a result. Yes.
Throughout your career, what has been one of your biggest obstacles and how have you overcome it?
That's a great question.
Sorry.
Well, you know, the biggest obstacle really is, you know, very often when I wanted to do something bold, let's call it, everybody would say you can't do it, can't be done, why waste your time? You know, it's almost discouraging at times. But again, you know, if you believe in something, you know, go for it. You know, don't listen to other people. You got to listen to your heart. You may not always succeed, but I'll tell you what, even with, you know, there's learning in failure, and you'll certainly be prepared, much better prepared the next time an opportunity comes along that you want to go for. So yeah, it's, you know, people's opinions, because we're all influenced by people's opinions. That's the biggest obstacle. So just be wary of that. Yes.
Do you think there are instances where governments want to make a change, say privatizing a bus route, whatever it is, and while it does make sense and they feel it's the best path to go forward, they don't, because there is public outcry and pushback from unions and organized, whatever it may be? Do you think that there are times where they reverse course because of those?
Well, absolutely. I mean, you come under intense pressure, you know, and the easiest thing to do is not to rock the boat. You know, let things go as they are. But that's where leadership comes in, doing the right thing. If you have your facts right and it's, you know, the right thing to do, you got to stand up and, you know, and fight for it, because you're going to get over it and it'll be better, and then hopefully you'll be appreciated for it. So you got to believe in what you're doing. Yes.
You mentioned being in government, you work with a lot of attorneys and they're lacking business skills. But are there any skills inherent to lawyers that you see, you know, that in your mind separates a good lawyer from a bad? And if so, as future young attorneys, how can we emulate those skills, or how can we, you know, learn them now?
Common sense. It goes beyond the line. Does it make sense? You get from a common sense point of view. Forget, you know, the regulation, the legal aspects. And this is, I'm not an attorney, but, you know, this is what I ask my, you know, the attorneys when they prepare, you know, an opinion on something, or they evaluate, you know, an issue that we have from a legal perspective. Do you understand the issue, first of all? Not only the legal aspects of it, but, you know, the business aspect. And frame your opinion and your decision, your legal opinion or decisions along what makes sense. What is in the best interest of the client? Is it just to fight, to end up in court, or to, you know, to reach a solution that would be beneficial to him? So you got to reach beyond just the legal aspect. I think in most cases, and again, that would be appreciated. And that's what I look at. You know, if I'm the business owner or the manager, do I want to fight? Do I want to go to court on every issue? So there has to be a cost-benefit analysis always. And I think to the extent that you as attorneys can offer that, you know, and say, look, you know, this problem, you know, it may be a problem. You know, we may be right, but it's, you know, it's going to cost us if we're going to pursue it, and probably end up in court much more than, you know, the value, and maybe there's, you know, a detriment to our marketing efforts, or to you know, our just our marketing efforts, our PR perception. Yes.
You had mentioned before that coming into government was accidental. Could you tell us a little bit about your path?
Well, yeah, it's very interesting because I've always been a very private, introverted person. If you had looked at me maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you would say George would be the most unlikely person to, ever run for office or to succeed in office. But I don't know, I guess I got mixed up with the wrong group. I was asked to run. I contemplated about it. I guess it was was at the right time in my career. My son was essentially running the company, so it was kind of time for me to get out of the way and let him pursue his dream. I certainly didn't want to retire and play golf, so it was a combination of a lot of things. It wasn't something that was planned. But once I decided to do it, I gave it all I had. I was determined to win, and nobody expected me to win. But I looked at the situation and I said it could be done. Yeah, I can make a difference. I have certain skills and a background that can make a difference, and I set out to win, and I did. And again, I think if you're willing to work hard, and you can achieve your dreams as well. And in most cases, you put in the effort, you're going to be successful. It's like taking an exam. If you work hard, you're going to do well. If you don't, then you're not going to do well. Yes.
You mentioned that you got a degree in engineering. What made you decide to go from engineering to an MBA?
Well, it's commonly thought that if you want to eventually go into management, you needed an MBA. I started out first at the Dell Labs, then in management consulting with Booz Allen and Hamilton, one of the premier consulting firms, which was interesting because consulting firms would only hire MBAs, but I had certain technical skills that they hired me. So everybody had an MBA, and most of them were MBAs from either Harvard or Yale or Princeton, and Yale was an engineer, but they worked for me. So it wasn't difficult, given that I was in that environment, and that, I guess, was the motivation that kind of prompted me to go and get an MBA. It also helped that my employer paid for it. Anybody else? What is your outlook? If some of you are graduating, this is your last year, how are the opportunities out there for you? Yes.
I think it's a tougher market, obviously, than a lot of us went in with. But opportunities are there, I think. It just takes a little extra time.
Right.
Just like anything else. It will take a little more time than we initially expected.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. Just be patient, do your best, and don't become frustrated. If anything, double your efforts. Yes.
I've been trying to think outside the box and, different career paths that aren't just strictly attorney related, government related, agencies, management, just it may be unexpected path, coming from law school to a non-law related job, but it might be the right one, so something to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. Government usually is a fertile hiring field for a lot of attorneys. But again, I think typically when I think you'll find when you first get your first job, I think it's important. Your manager will also be your mentor, so it's very important that hopefully you find somebody who's a good manager who you're going to look up to, because if you find somebody good to work for, you're going to become as good as he is. So it's important, for you to evaluate the company and your direct manager as much as they will evaluate you. Thank you very much. Enjoyed speaking with you.